All right, so Robbie, pretty excited here. We are live. Or not live, but we're live. Ricky, you're alive.
We're alive.
I'm alive.
And we're sitting in, what's the name of this place, Mike? The Cartwright Hotel in San Francisco.
We should give them a shout out because last minute change, we had to come here and they graciously allowed us to record here.
Should I talk a little crap about the Marriott?
Well, you just did.
I did. Marriott Bonvoy kicked us out of their lobby that was empty.
I think we should talk about this guy who's between us.
Ricky, so we're in San Francisco.
We are in San Francisco.
Do you think anybody knows San Francisco better than you do?
I guarantee there are a few people that know it better than I do. One guy, Toby Silver, and I can talk about him in a second, but I do know the city pretty well. Lived here for 6 years and did a little project here that I call Every Single Street, in which I ran every single street in the entire city. And though it's a little bit fuzzy, I definitely ran past this hotel.
That's amazing.
That is crazy.
I mean, I was telling Robbie today, we went for a run in the city, and I was like, I understand what you did. I'm sure if I looked at it on a Strava map, and maybe when we put this on, because we do this on YouTube and it goes out on an audio podcast, but on the YouTube, we should throw up a map of what it is that you actually did. I can comprehend it, but being in the city and we just ran a couple of things, I'm like, I don't understand how you navigate. How did you figure out how to map out the city for this run?
It was, I am definitely much more of an analog type person. And so it was, for me, every single day, printing out a map of what I thought I could accomplish in that day. And then I have a 4-color Bic pen and went about it and just kind of marked off the streets as I went along with the color blue. I circled streets that I may have missed with the color red. And then, the other 2 colors had their own meanings in there. But it was a complicated project that was equally physically as challenging as it was mentally. Okay.
And I'll just say for myself, I saw Robbie's face light up a little bit. That 4-color Bic pen, he's talking about. Yeah. Those were like my favorite.
Yeah.
Four sides. But was there any time where you were running the city that you obviously went back and marked one with red that you missed or something like that? Was there ones that popped out that weren't on a map that you kind of had to just figure out on your own?
San Francisco is super well established. So I haven't had that problem. I didn't have that problem here. You can zoom in, like every alleyway in the city has a name. Everything, if it's a private street, it's pretty well known. I'm doing the same project now in the town where I now live, which is Santa Fe, New Mexico. Oh, wow. And that's a different story.
That sounds easier though. Like Santa Fe, like San Francisco, this is a massive grid. Santa Fe is
on a logistical levels. I find Santa Fe more challenging because it's not on a grid, and so it's a bit more complicated in terms of figuring out the maze of completing that project.
So, So when you did San Francisco, first off, how many miles is it to run every street in San Francisco? And do you have any idea of the elevation? Because there's a lot of hills here.
Yeah. So the number of miles of street in San Francisco is about 1,100. Okay. It took me over 1,300 to complete the project.
Oh, wow.
That's the nature of inefficiency when doing something like that. Yeah. And elevation gain was 150,000 feet of climbing.
Whoa. That's 5 Mount Everest, by the way.
Yeah. And
we did 400 today and was like, woof.
Totally. Yeah, there was some brutal days in there, where you're just literally going up and down all day long, 10,000 feet in a day. I was definitely fit by the end of it.
Have you mapped out, if you looked at the United States and said, here's how far I would have gotten because it's only 3,000 miles across the United States. Yeah. Could you figure out how far you would have gotten across the states?
I figured that out before I did my project. So part of the reason that I did this project is before running all the streets here, I had running across the country. I'd started in South Carolina and over 5 months did a 3,700 mile trip to Ocean Beach here in San Francisco. Wow. And when I was thinking of a new project to come up to do after that, The run across the country was pretty rural. I was seeing a lot of farmland, a lot of small towns. I wasn't avoiding cities. I was definitely checking them out. But even going through Memphis, Tennessee, it takes you a half day, and you don't really get that much of a sense of a place when you're only in it for a half a day. So I wanted an urban project that was equally as challenging, and I Googled how many miles of street there are here in San Francisco. And I saw that it was 1,100 miles, and I knew that that was the same distance from approximately Denver to Ocean Beach, and I know how long that takes. And so, yeah, for that part, I had a good idea of what I was getting myself into.
I feel like most people can't say, I know how to frame an 1,100 mile run. You're probably one of the few people on earth who can say that.
But the other thing, Robbie, I think we discussed this. You did the run across the United States. Like, there's different ways people do it. People do it with an RV, or they do it, with support in a van or something like that. How did you cross the country?
For me, it was really important to take on that project in a way that I felt good about convincing, or trying to convince other people, or like a younger version of myself when I was waiting tables and bussing tables. Like, I want it to be something that is attainable for the common person. So I took it on as a solo project, self-supported, gave myself 5 months time, but also a budget of only $5,000. And I had everything in my backpack, front and back, and ate in gas
not even
stations.
like a stroller in front.
I had a stroller when I went across the desert. So a friend of mine saw that I had initially purchased a little golf cart caddy and put my extra water in a bucket and pushed that for about 150 miles across the desert. And my friend said, that's not sustainable. He found a little baby jogger at a yard sale in Ohio and sent it to Hanksville, Utah. And I picked it up, general delivery there, and pushed that from Hanksville all the way to Reno, Nevada, where I left it for my backpack, and then got the baby jogger back 4 years later. And I have a 6-month-old daughter now, which is a much more pleasant creature
insane
to push around than a Lowe's bucket full of water.
Is it the same baby jogger?
It's the same baby jogger. Yeah, my wife made me power wash it. It was pretty disgusting.
You're like, no, that's
has to be
dirt.
sterile
That's
for
a
the
memory.
kid.
That's memory dirt.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I think, a lot of people can do a physical challenge. The thing that I think about maybe self-supported running across the country, or even every street in San Francisco, like, mentally, what was the thing that maybe surprised you, or what did you come away with after doing these things? Like, when you're in the middle of the desert in the United States, and you know that your mission is to get all the way across, like, what happens to your brain?
Yeah, so I mean, the two projects were so different and almost opposites. Going across the country, it was very much an internal, especially when I was towards the end of the trip, when I'm going through the desert, it was very much an internal battle. By that point, I'd lost 25 pounds. I know I don't look like a big guy right now, but I was like 20 plus pounds less than I am right now. And just, I felt like I had already completed most of the goals that I had for myself for that run. And so it was very much an internal sort of thing. Here in San Francisco, it's such, like, this is the human hive. This is the center of humanity. And I'm not saying just San Francisco, but cities in general. We are social beings, and we come together in these massive populations. This is where things happen. And so you see a lot of positive things. You see, the potential of human beings coming together, but you also see a lot of negative stuff as well. And that's drug use and homelessness and a lot of stuff like that. So for me, a lot of it about running the streets here in San Francisco is simply bearing witness to what it means to be a human being on so many levels.
So it sounds like this was a little more external, like almost entertaining, like you can take in your surroundings, but maybe the trek across the United States was more internal.
Yeah, that felt accurate. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In your documentary on YouTube about running every street in San Francisco, one of the things that stood out to me was that you mentioned how cities are, when you most people live in cities throughout the world. I mean, the greater population of the earth lives in cities. But that cities also are a challenge. There's a lot of things happening and moving, and whereas, but it's also like more interesting in that way because there's things to solve, things happening. And that stood out to me as someone who grew up in the country, but now lives in Baltimore City, where it's like, there is an appeal of just like isolating yourself from the problems and the people and everything else. But there's also something beautiful about living in a city where it's all that's there. And sure, it has challenges like you mentioned, but it's also a place where you can see a lot of beauty and things like that. And I didn't know, like, it sounds like on your run in San Francisco, you saw a lot of that.
Yeah, I think that, and certainly as trail runners, we have this notion that environment or wilderness begins at a trailhead. Mm-hmm. And so we need to get from wherever we are, our house or the city, to the trailhead to begin to experience this thing that we love so much. And in doing my project of running every street in San Francisco, in taking that project, I took it to Mexico City for a 300-mile run there, and now I'm doing it in Santa Fe, New Mexico, is to recognize that the environment that we live in is equally as important, if not more important, really, of an environment as going to the trailhead to kind of release, to recognize that the environment right outside our front door is actually way more a part of who we are than the natural landscape that where we're really just kind of tourists out there.
I mean, I'll say when I go for runs with Robbie in the city, I usually stick to like kind of the more beaten paths. Robbie likes to go a little bit off course. It feels like a trail run in a city sometimes. So I agree with you that it's not always about, waiting to get to that trailhead and seeing the pine trees and the packed dirt to get out there. But, you seem to challenge yourself to things that are not, it's not like they're not audacious, like I'm going to do a stunt. It's more like I'm interested and curious about what it's going to take to do this. How is it that you plan to take on a challenge? Like right now you're like, okay, Santa Fe, I did San Francisco. I'm interested in repeating kind of that thing. But is there a process that you go through that, or is it just like, hey, that sounds like fun? Yeah,
I mean, it's definitely more than fun. And oftentimes it's not fun at all. But it's like how, I've been doing this sport. I've been engaged in this sport since I was 15 years old. I'm going to turn 41 next week. So we're coming up on 26 years doing the same sport over and over.
I turn 40 next week.
All right.
Cool. We're kind of in the same boat.
Brothers.
Fellow Taurus. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so, the sport initially started off as a way for me to meet people on the cross-country team. I started going to a new school. I wanted to make some friends, and so I joined the cross-country team to make some friends. And then after that, I realized like I had potential with it, and so it was more competition. And then as I got better and better, it was a way for me to feel really good about myself and to see the world. I was getting, with this wonderful opportunity with Salomon, and then also with a lot of these amazing races that have popped up over the past 15, 20 years, the opportunity to go to the Canary Islands or places in Europe or South America and see places. And I keep checking different boxes, and the sport keeps growing, and I keep learning more about the world and about myself. But for me, what's most important is that it never remains stagnant for me. And so then I came up with this idea to run across the country very much in the way that I wanted to do it, and then to run every street in San Francisco. And then now I'm thinking of different projects that keep the sport interesting to me and keep allowing me to understand my fellow human beings and the way we engage with the world.
Along those lines, I was kind of wanted to ask you, how have you changed the most from maybe before you did the Trans-American, the running every street in San Francisco, some of these bigger projects? How do you feel like you've changed through those experiences?
I think my outlook on how human beings engage with environment is how I've changed the most.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can break that down a little bit. So like, I mean, when it comes to running across the country, that project came at a time during, and unfortunately we're not out of it, a deep political and social divide in this country. And I wanted to, look at that very closely and put myself in that situation and see really what that was all about. And the end result is that I think that, it's actually, the divide certainly appears to be there, but it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
And then likewise here in San Francisco, like how we interact with the environment, like you can live here your entire life and actually only see a few parts of the city. I wasn't here for my entire life. I was here for 6 years by the time I took on that project.
Mm-hmm.
But it became very clear to me within the first week of the project how little I knew of the city just based on the normal routine that I have.
Right.
Getting from point A to point B and like visiting the specific places that appeal to me. And so kind of disrupting that. And so then moving forward, now that I'm taking on this project in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I just know that it's a way for me. I can move to a place and know that my propensity and the natural human propensity is to come up with your routine and get comfortable with it and then to kind of stick to it.
Yep.
And
for sure.
So for me, it's important to always be kind of disrupting that a little bit in order to not be complacent with that routine.
Yeah.
I think something I like about what you're doing is I think it's very easy in this sport to get competitive. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy to, people want to race. They want to prove themselves against other runners. They want to do these things where I feel like this is more of an internal motivation for you and a self-exploration, not so much a competitive. Am I reading that right? Or
I think you are reading it right, and I'm not going to claim that I'm not competitive. I'm definitely competitive. Like, if someone had have already done the Every Single Street project in San Francisco, would I have
done it faster?
Yeah, would I have done it, or would I have wanted to do it faster? And the reality is that it had been done before, and it took a gentleman 7 years to do it.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
For me,
7 years.
And for me, like I did want to get it done quickly. It wasn't about setting a record, but I did want to experience it. Much like people experience the Appalachian Trail when you're going hard on it, and I wanted that to find the intersection between those two.
How long did it take you again? Because I don't think we said
It
that.
took 45 days, I believe.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot shorter than 7 years.
Yeah,
You beat it.
and that was
know.
about 30 miles a day for about 45 days straight.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not good at math, but that one seems pretty easy to figure out.
Yeah. How many miles a day did you average when you did the Trans-American?
And that was a little bit less, more like a marathon a day.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Gotcha.
that includes some days off in there. I was a little bit more casual in there. And,
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I think one of the cool things that I noticed since you did the Every Street run, and like you said, some people have done things like that before, but I feel like, especially with Strava now and everything else, that it was like elevated to a lot higher level where it was entered people's consciousness as like a thing to do in their own cities.
Yeah.
And I know even since then, there's a guy in Baltimore City who during the pandemic ran Every Street in Baltimore. And then he eventually spread out to every street within the Beltway of Baltimore. So it was, which is crazy, like living there. I mean, first off, Baltimore, not the safest city ever. And so he did a lot of it early morning runs, like trying to not be in certain areas at certain times. But it just blew my mind in the same way running San Francisco. And I think that's awesome that people have kind of like entered their mind to do this kind of thing. So have you seen that or heard from people who are attempting things like that?
Yeah, it's literally the only hashtag. So when I started the project, I have a way of naming things. Like I look online, like, is the website taken?
Uh-huh.
Is that like
Smart.
how much content is already there with the hashtag, and with this one, I think there was 4 posts with every single street attached to it, and now there's 15,000.
Whoa,
that's insane.
That's cool.
For me, it's a way. Like I was hoping that it would catch on, and I'm just blown away that it has caught on as much as it has around the world. I mean, Munich, parts of London, parts of Japan. There's a couple people in Africa doing it, Dubai. And for me to look at this hashtag on Instagram is also a way for me to experience these places in a way that's not the normal. Like when you look at pictures of Paris, you're going to see the Eiffel Tower,
Right.
you're going to see the Louvre, you're going to see a few things. When you look at that cross section of every single street in Paris, like you see like what a normal street looks like and what normal people are doing,
The non-glossy.
and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so for me, it's a really interesting way to get to know a place. And then on top of that, like I wasn't a fan of there being this global pandemic over the past couple of years,
Right.
but you know, so many of us lost the ability to travel for quite a while, but still wanted to explore and have an adventure. And I think a lot of people saw this project as a way to be able to do that and to have an adventure out their front door.
Yeah, it was like perfect timing. And obviously, it was unfortunate what happened, but like to have that, people would see that and have that as a goal. Yeah, it's really cool.
This is a good transition to maybe talk about health.
Yep.
And when you put your body through what you did, like crossing the United States or running 1,300 miles in San Francisco, it sounds feasible. But we all know that sometimes you wake up, leg isn't feeling the same, maybe a knee is a little twitchy, calf muscles that get sore. What was it like for you as far as keeping your body healthy and your diet during that time?
I can't say anything good about my diet during my run across the country.
You did mention gas station food.
Yeah, lots of hot dogs, and I had to take.
I love that. Like the guys who used to do the sub 4s who were like smoking cigarettes and eating pizza.
Totally.
Yeah, like go ahead.
I had to take a break from hamburgers and French fries after my run across the country for a little while. But there's something beautiful about like when you're doing a project like that, you know, as runners, if we've got something going on with our knee or like an ankle or something like that, our instinct is to stop and like take a few days off. And for me, that just wasn't an option for my run across the country. I mean, I could have stopped, but it's like, it just doesn't feel right. What was an option is to stop and walk for a couple miles or walk for a day. And then like amazingly, so many of these injuries that I had, and I had quite a few, you know, the little flare ups here and there, they just kind of go away. And to me, it was really interesting to see like how resilient the human body is and how quickly it can heal itself if we allow it to.
Did that make you think that, like the mental aspect, like you had a mission, your mission was to get across the United States. If you got injured and you don't have a mission, maybe you're just training, you know, regular training, and something goes wrong, you go, okay, I need it, and it takes weeks for it to heal or whatever. But when you're like, I'm getting to the other side.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for that. I also think there's a lot to be said for like runners think that running is the only way to become a faster runner, and there's nothing wrong with walking. And in like going back to how I named my the next project Every Single Street as such, rather than Run Every Street, which would be, you know, a lot of people I think would prefer, is that I didn't like it. To me, like running is a very limiting word. Like running is technically when you are moving forward and both feet are off the ground at the same time. Like that is running. Like if one foot's touching the ground at all times, that's technically walking.
Yeah.
Speed walking.
Yeah.
And some of those guys are faster than me, by the way.
Yeah. And like why limit ourselves to that? And it's also, I just find that it can be pretty limiting to a broader population. I think a lot of people are intimidated by running because of these barriers that we set up. So if people like take on this project and walk all of their cities, like, or bike all of their cities, or wheelchair or skateboard, like whatever it is, like the goal to me is way more that people see and experience a place and explore their own minds and their judgments rather than this act of running.
Other than the hashtag, how do people participate in kind of sharing with you like what they're doing?
A lot of people reach out and ask what the rules are. And I'm like, I'm not a huge fan of gatekeepers, and I'm like, there's no rules. Like it's your, like whatever you feel, like do your neighborhood, do your city, run it, walk it, like, short amount of time, long amount of time, whatever it is. And then, just seeing, like I'm an obsessive photographer. It helps me kind of look at and process a place and a project. And so it's fun to see other people out there that are obsessed with photographing it as I am. And so that's oftentimes what I find most interesting.
Nice.
And then also, like, the project is very data driven, and so it does appeal a lot to a certain type of mind. People come up, there's like several people have come up with different apps and algorithms in order to take on this project in a different way.
One thing I wanted to ask you about the data driven stuff is, what programs do people use to map out their runs, make sure they hit like every street, as opposed to just check
The 4-color big pen.
Yeah. Because I feel like there's an electronic way to do that as well.
Totally. I think the number one program that people are using specifically for this every single street project, and this came about I think before I started my project, so unrelated, is called City Strides. And it takes your data from, whether it's your Garmin, your Suunto, from Strava, whatever app you prefer, and ties it into one solid map layer.
Okay, cool.
So that's, and then again, I
Wait,
can
so you're saying that I can run my independent streets, doesn't all have to be at once or anything like that. It takes that and meshes all my runs together and gives me a map of where I've run.
Totally. And you can do it right now. Go to City Strides and you can see what your normal runs are.
Do you just upload a GPX file like straight up to the site?
You connect it to Strava.
Oh, really? It syncs. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's just a couple buttons and permission.
Nice. That would be interesting just for our friends, like to be like, okay, have we all? How much of it have we covered? But that's cool. We'll have to check that out.
Yep. We'll have to
So that's one way. And then, like, I personally enjoy kind of like looking at the maps that I've drawn through a different app and kind of removing the map itself, and then toggling with this and just kind of seeing the designs that are made. I think that's one of the things that are that's really appealing to people with this project. Is a normal run is like a point-to-point line or a loop or something like that, but with this every single street thing, like you've got a 10-mile run and it's abstract and it fits into a much smaller thing, and it feels like you accomplished something just by looking at this image.
Do you think it attracts people who love to do like puzzles and stuff? I feel like if you're locking in these pieces of streets, you're like, I have to finish this puzzle.
I'm certain that it does. And I'm not even like much of a puzzle person. And I know that I love looking at this and kind of figuring it out on multiple levels.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. And before we switch over, because we're going to talk about Salomon, who's a sponsor for you, but before we switch over, you have a wife.
Yep.
And obviously from cleaning off that carriage that you took across the country, you have a stroller and possibly a child in that stroller.
Yep.
So you're spending a lot of time out on the roads and doing projects like this. How do you manage the personal time and the run time?
Yeah, so our child Wilhelmina, our little girl, she's 6 months old. So this is kind of a new thing. This first year, we're just kind of taking it week by week and project by project. My wife works a more normal hour job, so I've got Willa from 9 in.the morning till 4 p.m. And then I get out and do my thing when Liz comes home.
So a night runner.
Sort of.
Evening.
And then right now I'm in the middle of a project called Ultra Training, and this is something that I started 6 days ago. I've taken the train from Santa Fe, New Mexico, here to San Francisco, all on public transport. stopped off at in Albuquerque in the Grand Canyon, ran down to the river and back, and then a couple days in LA, did a short little every single street project there, and then up to here for this event and I guess some drinking of some bourbon tonight.
Yeah, there will be.
And,
So
spill the beans on that. But
yes, well, you can spill. I think that everybody's
That's a good
aware of the
transition.
sneakeasies happening.
That's a good transition.
But yeah, so you're here in San Francisco. You're here for a project. You're here with
Yep.
Salomon.
Yep.
And they're launching. Why don't you talk to us a little bit? I'm going to hand you, actually. I don't want to hand you Robbie's. Is this your shoe, Robbie?
That's Megan's, I think.
There's no way
I'm
they're
wearing them.
gnarlier than mine.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
I think you can still drink a cocktail out of these.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
were having a conversation about that today. We're against the
shoey trend.
Yeah.
We think we're moving on.
Yeah, I'm like, they're shoes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll get into both of them, but these are both a limited edition. Why don't you just tell us about the two brands that have come together here?
Totally. So Ciele and Salomon. Ciele makes these awesome hats. They're based out of Canada. They just do really cool things. And then Salomon, who I've run for the past coming up on 15 years, they made a baby, and this is that baby. This one and the one that's on my feet, that right over there.
So that's for
Phantasm.
those listening. It's the Phantasm and the Pulsar Trail Pro.
Totally. And so we got the road shoe and the trail shoe.
Most
and-
notably, knobs.
Yeah. And they're just they're super fun. I was lucky to get a shoe a week ahead of time, and I've been wearing it on the train, and I've been wearing it through LA and some interesting places.
Yeah.
And
the idea of stopping on the
people-
train and running is pretty cool.
Yeah. And people love them. I love them. They're
Yeah.
super comfortable.
You notice they're kind of like it's like a techno animal, futuristic animal print.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got like
Yeah.
cheetah, tiger stripes, jungle.
Yeah.
The one you're holding right now has the Ego foam on top, and in the center it has a TPU plate. And then I'm gonna have Mike. I know I want to say it, but
Just yell it
give
out
me the
to us.
bottom foam. Energy cell,
Cell.
which you're gonna find in which shoe? Speed Cross and stuff like that. So you get a firmer foam on the bottom with a plate and a nice soft foam for you to land your foot on. Has a nice responsive ride. We took it out over the Golden Gate Bridge today, the road version. So the Cheetah,
Yeah.
and the Phantasm. And we haven't worn this one yet. Have you worn this one yet, Robbie?
Not yet. I laced it up just to see how it feels
Okay.
at home. So that's not an official review right there. But I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm going to get out on the trails this weekend.
Yeah, and so there's an event tonight where we're kind of like just celebrating the launch of this partnership, and it's going to involve bourbon, which is kind of strange because we're doing it the night before.
Yeah,
run.
Solomon, this is dangerous. We're stepping in dangerous waters here, having a speakeasy event the night before a run.
Yeah,
Like,
that we're supposed to show up to.
They
We'll see.
Yeah, they know how to get rid of a hangover the quickest possible way is
Yeah.
going out immediately in the morning.
Let's talk.
So, Ricky, I'm guessing that you do enjoy a beverage then if you're coming to the speakeasy
I
event.
do from time to time. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there something that's your favorite? Like after a run, like this will...
After a run, a light beer, bourbon and branch. I'll get an old fashioned tonight.
Oh, that sounds good.
Can't go wrong
A
there.
little bit of sugar.
Yeah.
Get going.
Yeah.
Citrus.
All right. So in your relationship with Salomon, you said it's been 15 years, right?
Coming up on 15
Wow.
years. Yeah.
And so mostly that's going to be in trail shoes, I'm guessing.
Mostly trail. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So when you did the San Francisco project and you ran every city, what shoe were you wearing?
I wore the Predict.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the Predict was an interesting shoe that kind of has a segment, almost like bulbs in it, like
Totally.
things like that. Did you find that you were your feet felt comfortable and it was good for you for the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, as best as one can do with doing 50K a day for 6 weeks straight. Yeah.
The downhills here, I think the uphills are hard, but the downhills, I think, got to hurt a little bit.
Yeah, just tuck and roll.
Is that it?
Yeah.
You didn't
Every
even run
single
the
street,
downhill.
not run every single street. You can roll
Barrel
every
rolls.
single.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what have you run in the Pulsar Trail Pro yet? Did you say, or just on this
the
last
train
week?
you did.
Yeah. Have you run in the Trail Pro?
Yep, I ran to the bottom of the Grand Canyon.
Okay, cool.
Just a couple days ago, and they were great. The mule trains down there just cleared to the side of the trail for me
Nice.
when you come up with these.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were amazing. Super comfortable, super responsive, and yeah.
And what's crazy is that this is a new trail shoe from Salomon, the Pulsar Trail Pro, but the Ciele version, this collab version that we're talking about right now, this is out before the actual Trail Pro. Is that correct?
That's what's going on with like, what is that? Is that just like supply chain issues everybody's having? Every brand.
It's like a happy accident because you end up getting the cool collab version before the before the
I would grab these if you can.
I think Ciele would be really psyched about that.
Ciele's getting a great part of the deal. So the toe caps on the shoe are mismatched. There's a pink and then there's like a tangerine toe cap. Do you have a preference? Like it's Twix bar left and right?
I'm a fan of the tangerine, but I do love
a little hot pink.
Totally. And I'm one to go weird. So it's never been weird. As Hunter Thompson said, it never got weird enough for me. So.
Awesome. Have you gotten any of the Salomon athletes to take on some of these challenges with you or do any of these runs with you? Yeah,
I do believe our friend Mike Ambrose over here did every single street of Latour. How many miles was that? 1.2 miles. 1.2 miles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Every single street Latour, France.
It's 1.2 miles.
Yeah.
It's a time.
It's quite the effort.
Is this a school for ants?
But there has been some other teammates that have taken on the project, and whenever I can get my teammates to join me, whether it's for this project or I guide a lot of running trips throughout the summertime, hut trips in Colorado called Hut Run Hut.
I've heard of Hut Run Hut.
Yeah, or this bus trip that I have up in Alaska this coming summer called Bus Run Bus. Whenever I can get my teammates to join me, I'm super psyched about it.
How's the Bus Run Bus thing work?
The bus moves.
The bus trip is kind of my version of Ken Kesey's bus from the 60s, the Further Mobile, and it's a trip that I put together with a converted bus. I get 30 people on the bus, and we cover about 1,000 miles driving, and end up at some of the most beautiful trails in all of Alaska and camp out.
Robbie's gonna leave.
I'm like, how do I leave my family and my job for?
Well, it'll be part of your job. Reporting live from Alaska.
That's awesome.
So basically, I'm guessing that you have all your supplies on the bus, get out and you run. The bus meets you at the next stop.
Totally. It's either a point to point, the bus goes around, picks you up, or it's a loop. And
I don't know. It's kind of bougie, but the Trans Rockies run. I don't know if you've ever done that.
I have.
I love. That's one of my favorite.
Yep.
Because you do your run in the morning, your tent set up. When you get to the next spot, there's a beer truck.
Ultra, hanging out.
The shower truck.
Totally.
Yeah. You did Trans Rockies?
I did Trans Rockies 12 years ago. My teammate was Anna Frost. We had a great time. Okay.
Wait, we were there together.
You had the same one?
Anna Frost won, didn't she?
We won the co-ed division. That was a long time.
That was when Gore-Tex was. That
was Gore-Tex.
Yeah, that was amazing.
It was fun, and so that was.
So Ricky and I go way back.
Yeah, and it was because of that race that I wanted to start organizing similar sort of trips, but minus the competitive. Mine can be pretty bougie. I'll call the food on Hut Run Hut is pretty amazing.
Nice. And when I say bougie, it's what I mean by bougie is that you're well taken care of. Like I didn't feel like I was roughing it. I mean, you're sleeping in a tent, but there's porta potties.
Totally.
There's a food tent that is staffed by like great cooks. Like the second to last night, where you end up in Vail, Colorado, Robbie, and there's steaks on the grill, corn cob on the grill. Like the food is insane. So if yours are anything like that, we'll have to figure out how to get out.
I do love how ultra running, even if you're doing an ultra race, it's like the food is basically more important than the like it's so good no matter you could do this small like fat ass race in your town and the food's gonna be insane.
It could be a matter of perspective. Like after you run 20 miles,
that's true.
Everything tastes
Snickers
good.
bar tastes pretty amazing.
That
was the amazing thing is that when you think about doing mileage like that in the Trans Rockies, 120
120
miles
over 7 days or 6 days.
6 days, and you think, I'm going to be running a lot. You're running for a couple hours in the morning, and then you're at a camp. There's a fire going, and like you said, drinking Michelob's in the middle of the Rockies.
Listening to Gordy Ainsley talk about Gordy Ainsley.
I think Trans Rockies needs to like sponsor this episode, co-sponsor or something.
They're good people.
We really pitched
they're
it
good
out
people.
there. I did want to ask a question since we're here in San Francisco. Growing up, I was like a huge fan of like beat writers, Jack Kerouac. On the Road was like a very important part of my perspective. And I was here in San Francisco, stopped at City Lights bookstore. Do you have any books or anything like that that inspired you to do this kind of like lifestyle that you're doing right now?
I was also, pretty inspired. I loved On the Road. I loved a lot of travel books. And then kind of along those lines, I grew up in Aspen, Colorado.
Okay.
And, one of our more well-known, notorious residents was Hunter Thompson for quite a while.
Sure.
Who pioneered the gonzo journalism.
Yeah.
And I'm a writer as well, writer and photographer, and it helped kind of move me along down that road. And like, how can I have an experience and also tell a story about it?
Yeah.
So a lot of his.
I feel like if you're looking for a best friend, you may have just found one.
Yeah. So like Hell's Angels
like,
is
yes.
one of his books that I was just fascinating to me. He more or less joined the Hell's Angels for a year until they got sick of him and beat the crap out of him and kicked him out. And then he wrote a book about it.
Yeah,
So.
quite the experience, immersive journalism, I guess. Yeah, that's cool. Do you have any books right now that you're reading that you're into?
I'm reading a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is really interesting. It's about kind of Native American wisdom and how we can have a better relationship with our environment.
Nice. Very cool.
Told through a lot of kind of short stories, anecdotes.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm also surprised, Robbie. Robbie's a music lover. I hate music and books.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
As he's wearing a David Bowie shirt right now.
When you're traveling across country or running every street, are you listening to music or podcasts or anything?
Not very much. There's been times when I have listened to podcasts or music when I've been running. When I ran across the country, literally there was like 6 songs that I was listening to almost nonstop.
What were they?
Let's see. One
Tell
of
me
them,
it's Kelly Clarkson.
Walk.
Yeah, one of there was a Neil Young song, unsung hero. I know that's wrong, but and then there was a Tom Petty song, and then there was a couple others. Unknown Legend. Yeah, so good. Yeah, there's a line in there about this woman riding a motorcycle across the desert. And when I got to the desert and I saw a woman riding her motorcycle, that like the song was done for me. Like, all right, check, done. Gotta find a new song.
Someone just covered that recently. I know. I forget who it was. That's like so you have like a classic Americana playlist going on. Like
I would say so. Yeah. And then here in San Francisco, I didn't listen to any music or listen to any podcasts. Part for safety's sake, but in part, I just wanted to be 100% present in the environment that I was in. And now I don't listen to music all that much because I've got a dog, and being out on the trails, like it's really important for me to be listening to where my dog is.
Yeah.
And it feels like just the presence of another being out there. I wouldn't be listening to music if it was a running friend.
Right.
And this is a running friend. And
I like it.
Yeah.
So you don't strap a speaker onto him or anything?
No.
All right. Well, I mean, I think we've learned a ton here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to have some cocktails tonight, celebrate the shoe launch.
Yeah.
And it's really like, I don't know, it's humbling to hear some of the things that you've done and what you've accomplished, and just the mindset that it takes, and the discipline, and also the love of what you're doing. So it's definitely, it gets you feeling like you should do something, doesn't it, Robbie?
Like, let's plan some crazy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it was really cool. Yeah, like same thing that Tom said, just getting to hear the stories behind the stories. So anyways, anything else, Thomas?
I just want to get some drink on.
Yeah, I think we're going to end this now so we can get to that.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much. And I want to thank Salomon for putting us together. this is our second Salomon interview. We got to talk to Mike Ambrose and Courtney DeWalter when we were in Colorado about a year ago.
Yep.
So I guess every year we should get together.
Yeah.
And
let's line it up
get
again.
a legend with us and get to talk to him. So this was great.
All right. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Great.